I wasn't supposed to be at the gala, but something inside me, maybe my gut feeling, maybe my desire to know why something is feeling off, made me come here. That was the sentence echoing in my head as I stepped out of the car and onto the marble drive of the waterfront hotel. Cameras flashed for people who mattered more than I did tonight. According to my husband, I didn't belong inside. Calder had told me not to attend the gala 3 days earlier, his voice flat, rehearsed. It's better if you skip this one. No argument, no apology, just a decision already made. He said it was about optics, about politics, about the firm wanting a tighter narrative. I wore a black silk dress anyway. Not dramatic, not loud, just precise. The kind of dress you choose when you're done asking for permission. Inside, the room hummed with money and hierarchy. I scanned the space instinctively, the way I always had, clocking alliances, reading body language, noticing who avoided whose eyes. I didn't see Calder at first. What I did see were faces that recognized me, and then quickly looked away. That was the first fracture. Not shock, not surprise. Avoidance. I was halfway across the ballroom when someone touched my elbow. "Excuse me," a man said quietly. "Ilara?" I turned. It was Richard Hale, Calder's boss, senior partner, the man whose approval had dictated our last 3 relocations, our weekends, our vacations, our lives. He wasn't smiling. "I didn't realize you'd be attending," he said. Not accusatory. Careful. "I almost didn't," I replied. "But here I am." He nodded once, like he'd been bracing for this. Then he gestured toward a quieter corner near the bar. "May I speak with you for a moment?" People were watching. I felt it. The way attention sharpens when something unscripted enters the room. Richard leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I'm not sure how to say this, so I'll be direct." My pulse slowed. That instinct again. The one that used to serve me in boardrooms before I stepped aside for my marriage. "Calder has been introducing another woman as his partner," Richard said. "For months." I stared at him, waiting for the rest, the clarification, the mistake. "There's been confusion," he continued. "Tonight wasn't meant to include you. I assumed you knew." I didn't move. My hands didn't shake. My mind started cataloging details instead. How the music hadn't stopped, how the bartender was polishing a glass, how a woman nearby laughed too loudly. "Who?" I asked. Richard exhaled. "A consultant. She's been attending internal events with him, fundraisers, dinners. She's here tonight." I didn't ask why. I didn't ask how long. Those answers were already lining up in my head, attaching themselves to every canceled trip, every closed laptop, every time Calder stepped outside to take a call. "Where are they?" I said. Richard hesitated, then pointed. I followed his gaze. Calder stood near the center of the room, relaxed, confident, his hand resting on the bare back of a woman I didn't recognize. She was laughing, leaning into him, perfectly placed, familiar in a way that hurt less than the certainty forming in my chest. People around them watched me notice. I walked toward them before my mind could interfere. Calder saw me from across the room. His face changed instantly. Not guilt, not fear. Calculation. The same look he used when a meeting went off script. "Ilara," he said when I stopped in front of them. "You weren't supposed to..." I turned to the woman first. "I'm his wife." Her smile faltered. Just slightly. She stepped back, already disentangling herself. "That's not what he said," she replied. Calder cut in quickly. "This isn't the place." I looked at him then. Really looked. 11 years collapsed into a single moment of clarity. "You told me not to come," I said. My voice was calm, clear enough that people nearby leaned in without pretending not to listen. "Because you didn't want me to see this." He lowered his voice. "We'll talk later." "No," I said. "You won't." The woman shifted, eyes darting between us. "I didn't know," she said again, this time louder, defensive. "I believe you," I replied. And I did. Calder had always been good at narratives. He reached for my arm. I stepped back before he could touch me. "Don't," I said. "You've done enough in public." A murmur rippled outward. Phones appeared. People pretended to sip drinks while listening closely. "I built this with you," I continued, my eyes never leaving his. "Every move you made, every introduction, every sacrifice, and you erased me because I didn't fit your upgrade." Calder's jaw tightened. "You're making a scene." I smiled, not because it was funny, because it was done. "No," I said. "I'm ending one." I turned and walked out without waiting for a response. The night air hit my face like permission. My hands finally trembled when I reached the car, but I didn't sit right away. I stood there, breathing, letting the reality settle into my bones. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was strategy. And if Calder Voss thought I would disappear quietly, he had miscalculated everything. I got into the car and closed the door. As we pulled away, I made myself a promise, simple, exact, and irreversible. He would lose more than he took from me, and I would make sure he watched it happen. Calder and I didn't start this way. We met when neither of us had anything to leverage except ambition. He was sharp, controlled, already thinking 3 moves ahead. I was the one who could see the whole board. We built fast, careers, connections, credibility. When his firm offered a promotion that required relocation, I was the one who said yes first. When his hours doubled, I learned how to make silence feel supportive instead of resentful. People like to say marriages fall apart because of distance or neglect. Ours didn't. Ours was maintained meticulously. Too meticulously. When our daughter was born, I stepped back from my own trajectory without bitterness. It made sense. Calder's income was climbing. Mine was flexible. I became the stabilizer, the one who handled school schedules, social obligations, family politics. I made sure his image never cracked. I hosted dinners. I remembered names. I smoothed over tensions he never even knew existed. The house we lived in wasn't just a home, it was an asset. Part of it came from my side, money my father left me, structured carefully, intended for stability. Calder knew this. He thanked me for it, repeatedly, publicly. He called me his anchor. I believed him. There were warning signs, not dramatic ones, administrative ones. A password changed here, a calendar blocked there. Trips that didn't quite add up. But every time I questioned it, Calder had an answer that sounded reasonable enough to quiet doubt. I wanted to trust him more than I wanted to be right. The gala forced me to replay everything with new clarity. The sudden insistence that I stop attending events. The way he corrected me when I spoke about his work, as if I no longer had proximity to it. The nights he said he was with the team, but couldn't say which one. After I left the hotel, I didn't go home. I drove until the city thinned, until the streets stopped asking questions. I sat in the car and let memory reorganize itself. Every compromise I'd made stacked neatly into something that finally had a name. Betrayal doesn't arrive loudly. It settles in quietly and waits for permission to stay. When I did go home, Calder wasn't there. His absence felt intentional now, not incidental. I walked through the house like it belonged to someone else. His shoes by the door, his jacket on the chair, evidence of a life that had been edited without my consent. I checked the shared tablet we used for our daughter's schoolwork. Not because I suspected anything, but because it synced automatically. There were emails I hadn't seen. Calendar invites forwarded to a personal address. Photos from dinners I hadn't attended. In more than one, the same woman stood beside him. Close. Familiar. Not hiding. I stopped scrolling when my hands started to shake. Still, part of me wanted confirmation that didn't come from a screen. I called my sister. She answered on the second ring. I didn't preface it. I didn't dramatize it. I just said, "Tell me the truth." There was a pause. Long enough to matter. "Elara," she said carefully. I didn't know how to bring it up. My chest tightened. How long? A while, she admitted. People talk. I heard it at a fundraiser months ago. I didn't believe it at first. Then I saw him. Not with you. I closed my eyes. I should have told you sooner, she said. I thought it might blow over. I didn't want to hurt you. It didn't blow over, I said. It upgraded. She didn't argue. We sat in silence, the kind that confirms things without explaining them. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I made a list. What I stood to lose wasn't just a marriage. It was time. Stability. My daughter's sense of safety. Financial structures that had been built under the assumption of partnership, not deception. Calder had gambled with shared resources, with my inheritance, with a life I had protected for over a decade, and he had done it confidently, assuming I would stay quiet, stay unsure, stay behind the scenes where I had always been useful. That night, I understood the real stakes. If I hesitated, I would be rewritten. If I acted, I could control the ending. I went upstairs and checked on my daughter. She slept peacefully, unaware of the fault line running beneath her world. I brushed her hair back gently and made a promise that mattered more than any vow I'd made before. This would not touch her. And it would not end with me asking questions. It would end with answers and consequences. By morning, I wouldn't be reacting anymore. I would be deciding. I woke up before the alarm, already clear. Shock had its moment the night before. Morning belonged to logistics. I didn't pace. I didn't spiral. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't finish and opened my laptop. The first thing I did was change passwords, all of them. Email, cloud storage, banking portals. Anything that carried my name, my history, or my signature. Calder had always handled money like a performance. Confident, fast, slightly theatrical. I handled it like a system. That difference mattered now. By 8:30, I was on the phone with an attorney a friend had recommended years ago, just in case. I used the words separation and financial exposure without hesitation. I asked about asset protection, temporary orders, and how quickly accounts could be frozen without tipping off the other party. She didn't sound surprised. She sounded prepared. Next, I called the bank. The inheritance account was the priority. It had never been fully merged, by design. I transferred what I legally could, placed holds where appropriate, and documented everything. Clean, traceable, defensive. Calder wouldn't notice immediately. He rarely checked balances. He checked outcomes. I boxed his clothes while the house was still quiet. Not angrily, methodically. Suits first, shoes next, personal items last. I left the boxes in the garage, labeled. No drama, no destruction. Just removal. By late morning, the real estate agent arrived. I'd already pulled comps. I didn't ask if selling was wise. I asked how fast we could move without devaluing the property. We can list discreetly, she said. Pre-market. Do it, I replied. This house had never been sentimental to Calder. It had been strategic. That made it easier to let go. At noon, I picked up my daughter from school early. I told her we were having a quiet afternoon together. I didn't mention her father. I didn't need to. Children sense shifts long before adults admit them. She sat at the counter drawing while I made lunch with one hand and texted with the other. The lawyer, the agent, the accountant. A short list of people who would need to know, not emotionally, but operationally. By the time Calder called, I was already ahead of him. Alara, he said. His voice was tight, controlled. Why is the bank flagging transfers? I didn't answer right away. I looked at my daughter, then stepped into the hallway and closed the door. Because I'm protecting my assets, I said. You don't get to do this unilaterally, he snapped. I do, I replied. And I am. There was a pause. Not confusion, disbelief. You're overreacting, he said. You embarrassed me last night. We could have handled this privately. You handled it privately, I said. For months. He lowered his voice. This affects my work. Yes, I said. That's the point. Another pause. Longer this time. You listed the house, he said finally. Not a question. I did. You can't just erase our life because you're angry. I'm not angry, I said. I'm done subsidizing your choices. He exhaled sharply. Where is she? At the table, I said. Where she belongs. He swore under his breath. You're making a mistake. No, I said. I'm correcting one. I hung up before he could regain control of the conversation. That afternoon, I forwarded documentation to my attorney. Screenshots, emails, calendars, dates, not for revenge, for leverage. Truth, properly archived, is power. By evening, Calder came home. He walked into the kitchen like he still owned it. Stopped short when he saw the boxes in the garage through the open door. What is this? He demanded. Your things, I said calmly. You'll need them. This is insane, he said. We haven't even talked. We're talking now. He stepped closer. You're blowing up everything. I met his eyes without flinching. No, I'm stepping out of the blast radius. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Notifications, alerts, consequences beginning to cue. He looked at the screen, then back at me. What did you do? He asked. I picked up my bag and reached for my keys. Enough, I said. And I'm just getting started. I walked past him, out the door, already moving forward, while he stood there, finally realizing he was no longer in control. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It started with delays. Calder called the bank again, then again. Each time, he hit a wall that didn't argue back. Automated responses, compliance reviews, temporary holds, the kind of language that sounds polite while saying no. By the second day, his tone shifted from irritation to urgency. Ilara, he said over voicemail, trying for calm. We need to resolve this. I can't access operating funds. Operating funds. The phrase told me more than he realized. He wasn't worried about groceries or rent. He was worried about appearances, about dinners already promised, about a lifestyle already committed to. I didn't return the call. Instead, I met with my attorney again. We filed for a temporary financial order and exclusive use of the home pending sale. Everything was above board, clean. When Calder finally read the notice, he would realize this wasn't emotional retaliation. It was structural. By Wednesday, the firm noticed. Not officially. Not yet. But patterns don't stay invisible when money tightens. Calder missed a contribution deadline for a donor event. He postponed a business lunch. He declined an invite he would normally headline. Questions followed. Richard Hale emailed me directly. I hope you're well, he wrote. Calder seems distracted. If there's anything we should be aware of, please let me know. I read it once, then forwarded it to my attorney, then archived it. The woman from the Gala, the consultant, felt the shift next. She reached out to me that afternoon, not with apology, with explanation. I truly didn't know, she wrote. He told me you were separated. I believed that part. But belief didn't equal responsibility. I'm sure he told you many things, I replied. I won't be part of whatever comes next. She didn't write back. 2 days later, I heard from someone else that her contract had been paused pending review. Not terminated. Not yet. But proximity has consequences when the narrative changes. The social circle reacted in fragments. Some people went silent. Others became suddenly busy. A few reached out carefully, as if testing the temperature before committing to a side. One woman I'd hosted countless dinners for texted me. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Another sent. Let me know if you need anything. No one asked what Calder needed. By the end of the week, the house was officially listed. Quietly. No public announcement. Just a discreet posting circulated among serious buyers. The agent told me interest was strong. People liked the location, she said, and the timing. So did I. Calder finally came back to the house on Friday evening, later than usual. He stood in the doorway longer this time. took in the half-empty closets, the absence of my shoes by the door. "You can't just shut me out," he said. "I didn't," I replied. "You walked out months ago." He rubbed his temples. "You're hurting more than just me." "That's unfortunate," I said, "but not my responsibility." He looked at me then, not as a husband, but as someone recalculating leverage. "You're freezing me out," he said. "No," I corrected. "I'm untying myself." His phone rang. He answered it this time. "Yes," he said. "I'm aware. I'll handle it." He ended the call and stared at the screen. "They want a meeting," he said. "Monday." I nodded. "Good. You think this is funny?" "I think it's predictable." That night, he slept somewhere else. I didn't ask where. Saturday morning, my daughter asked why her father wasn't home. "He's working through some things," I said. "But you're safe. And you're loved." She accepted that. Children don't need details. They need stability. By Sunday, Calder's desperation sharpened. He texted, then called, then showed up unannounced at my sister's place, hoping to triangulate sympathy. She didn't let him in. He looked shaken, she told me later. Not remorseful, just unsettled. That tracked. The first real crack came Monday afternoon. I was in a meeting with my accountant when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. "Ilara," Calder said. His voice was different now. Lower, careful. "We need to talk." "I'm listening," I said, "but I'm not negotiating." There was a pause. Then, "They've asked me to take a leave. Not fired, not yet, but exposed." "For how long?" I asked. "Indefinite," he said. I closed my eyes, not in relief, in confirmation. "You can stop this," he said. "You don't have to take it this far." "I didn't take it anywhere," I replied. "I stepped out of your way. Everything else followed." He swallowed. I could hear it. "Please," he said. That was new. "I'll be in touch through my attorney," I said. "This conversation is over." I hung up before he could respond. That evening, I sat alone on the back patio as the sun dipped behind the trees. The house felt lighter, not empty, reclaimed. The first consequences had landed, quietly, precisely. And Calder-Voss finally understood something he never had before. I wasn't reacting. I was dismantling. The invitation came through my attorney. Mediation intake, preliminary. Attendance recommended. Calder didn't ask if I would be there. He assumed. He still thought proximity meant access. The mediation offices sat above a downtown restaurant that hosted private events. Glass walls, white tablecloths, the kind of place where conversations floated. That morning, the restaurant was full. A tech philanthropy luncheon, donors, board members, people who recognized Calder's name, people who didn't expect to see me. I arrived early, on purpose. I chose a seat at the edge of the dining room, visible from the entrance. Not confrontational, just present. I ordered coffee and waited. When Calder walked in, he froze. He hadn't expected an audience. His suit looked sharper than it had the last time I saw him. Controlled presentation. But his eyes scanned the room too quickly, clocking faces, calculating exposure. Behind him walked the consultant. She stopped short when she saw me. Her confidence evaporated in real time. She hesitated, then took a step back from him, creating a gap that hadn't existed before. "Why are you here?" Calder hissed as he reached my table. "I was invited," I said. "Same as you." "This isn't the place," he whispered. "That's what you said last time," I replied. "You were wrong then, too. People were already watching. Not openly. Side glances, half-turned shoulders. The quiet interest of people who sensed something about to break." The consultant cleared her throat. "Calder," she said softly. "I thought this was private." He didn't look at her. His attention stayed on me. "We'll talk upstairs," he said. "Let's not do this here." I set my cup down carefully. "I won't be joining mediation today," I said. "My attorney has the documents. I came for something else." His jaw tightened. "What? To clarify, I said, standing, since there seems to be confusion. The consultant shifted, clearly uncomfortable. A woman at a nearby table leaned back slightly, angling for a better view. I turned to the consultant. I'm Alara, I said. I'm Calder's wife. She swallowed. He told me you were separated. That's interesting, I said evenly. Because he told me not to attend events anymore. Her face flushed. She looked at Calder. You said, he cut her off. This isn't appropriate. I smiled. Not at him. At her. You don't need to explain anything to me, I said. But you should know that every event you attended, every introduction you received, every opportunity you leveraged, came from a life I built and stepped away from. Her eyes flicked around the room. The weight of witnesses settled in. I didn't know, she said again, quieter now. That's no longer the issue, I replied. Calder grabbed my arm. Enough, he said sharply. I removed his hand from my sleeve. Don't touch me, I said. Clear. Loud enough. The room shifted. Not silence. Attention. I turned back to him. You told people I was gone, I said. You told them you were free. You told them a story that made you look convenient. His voice dropped. You're ruining my reputation. I nodded once. You outsourced that. Someone nearby snorted. A laugh escaped before it could be caught. The consultant took a step back. Another. She reached for her phone, then stopped, uncertain. I can't be part of this, she said suddenly. To him, not to me. Calder spun. Don't do this now. I didn't sign up to be collateral, she replied. Her voice shook, but she didn't move closer. I'm leaving. She walked past me without another word, eyes down, heels quick against the floor. The gap beside Calder widened into absence. A man at the next table leaned toward his companion. Whispers rippled outward. Calder turned back to me, anger breaking through the composure. You planned this, he said. I plan to stop being edited, I replied. You think people will side with you? He demanded. This will follow you. I met his eyes. It already follows you. His face reddened. You're vindictive. I tilted my head. You're exposed. That was when Richard Hale stood. He hadn't been at my table. He'd been across the room, watching. Ilara, he said, approaching. His voice was calm. Are you all right? I am, I replied. He turned to Calder. We'll need to reschedule mediation, and your leave remains in effect. Calder stared at him. You can't. I can, Richard said. And I am. Phones were out now, not openly filming, but ready. Messages being typed. Narratives forming. Calder looked around, searching for an ally. Found none. He leaned in, voice trembling with controlled rage. You didn't have to do this publicly. I leaned in too. Just enough. You taught me visibility is power, I said. I finally listened. I picked up my bag. As I walked away, a woman at a nearby table whispered, not quietly enough. That's his wife. The words spread faster than I did. By the time I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed with messages. Not sympathy, confirmation. Is it true? I'm so sorry. We had no idea. I didn't reply. Downstairs, the city moved on. Cars, sidewalks, normal life. Behind me, Calder Voss stood alone in a room full of witnesses, his carefully curated image collapsing under the weight of its own lies. And this time, there was no one left to stand beside him. Calder didn't retreat. He recalibrated. By Tuesday morning, the narrative had shifted, not in my favor, but in his. A colleague forwarded me a link with no commentary. A business blog, neutral tone, carefully worded. Senior consultant takes leave. Amid personal dispute, sources say separation was mutual, personal, dispute. Calder's fingerprints were all over it. The language was too clean, too deliberate. It painted him as a distracted executive navigating a private transition, not a man exposed for rewriting his marriage in public. By noon, there were more. A post on a professional forum, a short LinkedIn update from someone in his orbit praising his integrity under pressure. Comments followed. Sympathetic, vague, protective. He was doing what he always did when cornered, controlling the frame. He texted me that afternoon. "I'm asking you to stop this. We can resolve things privately." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the articles to my attorney. Then I opened a folder I'd been building quietly since the gala. Receipts don't shout. They wait. I had emails, calendar invites, travel reimbursements submitted under joint accounts for trips I hadn't attended, screenshots of messages sent during team dinners that never existed, photos synced automatically to shared storage, timestamps, locations, faces. And then there was the one thing Calder hadn't anticipated, a recording. Months earlier, he'd left a voicemail while I was in the room, speaking to someone he assumed wasn't me. He talked about optics, about how Ilara doesn't need to be everywhere anymore, about how this looks better for the firm. I'd saved it without knowing why. Now I did. I didn't dump everything online. That would have looked emotional, reckless. Instead, I sent a single packet to 3 people: Richard Hale, the firm's compliance officer, and a journalist who specialized in corporate ethics and had covered the firm before. No commentary, no framing, just documentation. By Wednesday evening, Calder's version of events started to fracture. The business blog updated its article with a correction. The word mutual disappeared. The comments under the LinkedIn post slowed, then stopped. One by one, endorsements were quietly removed. Thursday morning, the journalist published. The headline didn't use my name. It used his. Executives, personal leave, tied to undisclosed workplace relationship and misrepresentation of marital status. The article was restrained, factual, relentless. It didn't accuse. It showed. Dates, timelines, quotes. A mention of a spouse excluded from public events while another individual was presented as a partner. That was all it took. By noon, the hashtag appeared. Not your upgrade. It wasn't mine. I didn't start it. I didn't need to. Women recognized the pattern immediately, the quiet replacement, the gradual erasure, the way ambition excuses betrayal when wrapped in professionalism. Stories poured in, screenshots, comments, shared posts. Calder's name trended locally by nightfall. He called me repeatedly. I didn't answer. Then he left a voicemail. "This is getting out of control," he said, his voice stripped of polish. "People are saying things that aren't true." I listened once, then deleted it. The firm issued a statement Friday morning. "We take these matters seriously. An internal review is underway." Internal review meant lawyers. Lawyers meant distance. Distance meant Calder was alone. By afternoon, his access badge stopped working. He found out when security walked him out. Someone filmed it from across the street. Not close enough to see his face clearly. Close enough to identify the suit. The video spread anyway. By Saturday, the consultant released her own statement. Short, defensive, carefully worded. She denied knowledge, expressed regret, announced she was stepping back from public engagements. Her comments were disabled within an hour. Calder tried one last maneuver. He emailed my attorney, requesting an emergency meeting and proposing a settlement to prevent further reputational harm. I read it slowly. Then I responded myself. Any further communication should be directed through counsel. Please refrain from contacting me directly. Professional. Final. That evening, my sister sent me a screenshot. A group chat. People we'd known for years. Calder's name followed by silence. Someone typed, "We can't support this." Another replied, "Agreed." The last message was a single line. He did this to himself. I turned off my phone and sat on the floor of the living room, the house half empty now, echoes replacing furniture. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear, Calder Voss had spent years believing reputation was armor, that if he managed perception carefully enough, consequences could be deferred indefinitely. He was wrong. Truth doesn't need volume. It needs timing. And his had arrived. The legal process didn't feel dramatic. It felt surgical. Once the internal review began, everything accelerated. Calder's attorney tried to slow it down. Requests for extensions, objections framed as procedural. My attorney anticipated every move. Temporary orders became permanent boundaries. Access turned into restriction. Restriction became separation. Calder underestimated one thing consistently: documentation. The inheritance funds were traced cleanly back to my father. The house equity split accordingly. His attempt to claim joint ownership over assets he'd never contributed to collapsed under basic scrutiny. His bonuses, once impressive on paper, were frozen pending the firm's review, then clawed back due to ethics violations tied to undisclosed conflicts of interest. He called it unfair. The court called it enforceable. Custody was resolved quickly, not because I pushed, but because he couldn't contest stability. His schedule was unpredictable, his housing uncertain, his professional future suddenly unrecognizable. The judge didn't need commentary. The facts spoke. Primary custody went to me. Calder sat very still when it was announced, not angry, hollowed out. The house sold within 3 weeks. Above asking, I didn't gloat. I signed. He didn't attend the closing. He couldn't afford to be seen. By then, his family had already chosen distance. His brother stopped returning calls. His sister-in-law unfollowed him quietly, then blocked him. The final blow came from his father, a man who valued reputation more than reconciliation. "You embarrassed the family," he told Calder, according to a message Calder forwarded me in desperation. "Handle your consequences yourself. No offer of help, no safety net." Calder tried to soften the narrative with me. He showed up unannounced one afternoon, thinner now, unshaven, wearing a coat that didn't quite fit. He stood on the porch like a visitor who'd overstayed his welcome months ago. "I need time," he said. "This went too far." I didn't invite him in. "You took it too far," I replied. "I finished it." He asked about money. I referred him to his attorney. He asked about our daughter. I reminded him of the schedule. That was the end of the conversation. The consultant fared no better. Her contracts dried up one by one, not loudly, not publicly, but completely. Invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. She tried to rebrand. It didn't work. Her name had become shorthand for risk, for poor judgment, for proximity to fallout. She moved cities within 2 months. Calder heard about it secondhand. By then, he was living in a short-term rental outside the city. Not homeless, but close enough to isolation to feel it. His accounts were monitored, his credit flagged. He sold the car he loved first. Then the watch. I found out because he emailed me receipts he wanted reimbursed. I didn't respond. The final hearing was brief. The judge reviewed the settlement, confirmed compliance, and signed. Marriage dissolved. Assets divided. Custody affirmed. No speech, no ceremony. Just a stamp. When it was over, Calder looked at me like he expected something. Closure, perhaps. Or forgiveness dressed up as civility. I gathered my papers and stood. "This isn't personal," he said quietly. "It didn't have to end like this." I paused. "It ended exactly where it was headed," I replied. "You just assumed I wouldn't notice." Outside, the air felt different. Lighter. Like something heavy had been removed from the atmosphere. That night, my daughter and I ate dinner on the floor of the new place, cartons instead of plates, laughing about nothing important. She didn't ask about her father. She didn't need to. She was safe. I was solvent. And Calder Voss, once polished, protected, untouchable, had been reduced to a cautionary example of what happens when you mistake loyalty for invisibility. There was only one thing left. The ending. Calder asked to see me one last time. Not through attorneys, not through intermediaries. He sent a message that was almost careful enough to sound sincere. Please, just once. I won't ask for anything. I agreed because I no longer needed to protect myself from him, and because endings should be witnessed. We met in a quiet cafe near the courthouse. Neutral ground. No history. Mid-afternoon, when the place was half full and the light was unforgiving. I arrived first and chose a table near the window. When Calder walked in, I barely recognized him. Not because he looked ruined. He wasn't. But the confidence that once preceded him had dissolved. His shoulders were tense, his movements hesitant, like someone unsure where they were allowed to stand. He scanned the room before spotting me, then paused, as if reconsidering. Too late. He sat across from me, hands folded, eyes searching my face for something familiar. You look well, he said. I am, I replied. Silence settled between us. Not awkward, final. I didn't want it to end like this, he said at last. I nodded once. You didn't plan for it to end at all. He flinched. That's not fair. It's accurate. He leaned forward slightly. I made mistakes. I know that. But you didn't have to destroy everything. I studied him carefully. This version of Calder, the one asking for mercy, was unfamiliar, but not compelling. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I stopped protecting it. That's the same thing, he snapped, then caught himself, lowered his voice. You know what I mean. I didn't respond. He exhaled, rubbing his hands together. I lost my career, my reputation, my family. I'm barely holding things together. You're alive, I said calmly. That's holding. That's not what I meant. I know. He looked at me then, really looked, as if searching for the woman who once adjusted his tie before meetings, who softened his edges in rooms he didn't know how to read. I thought you'd forgive me, he said quietly. Eventually. I almost smiled. Forgiveness isn't the same as access, I said. You confused the two. His jaw tightened. I gave you everything. I shook my head. You let me carry everything. That landed. He leaned back, eyes glassy now. I didn't think you'd actually leave. There it is, I said. That's the truth. He swallowed. I thought you'd stay. You always did. I stayed because I believed we were building something together, I replied. The moment I realized you were building around me, not with me, I was already gone. The server approached, asked if we wanted anything. I ordered water. Calder declined. When she left, he spoke again, voice low. I don't recognize my life anymore. That's what happens when you outsource your conscience, I said. He laughed bitterly. You really don't care anymore. I care very much, I replied. Just not about you. That hurt him more than anger ever could. I loved you, he said, almost pleading now. I loved who you said you were, I corrected. That man doesn't exist. He stared at the table, shoulders slumping. Is there really nothing left to say? I considered it. Not out of kindness. Out of precision. There is, I said. But it's not for you. He looked up. You mistook my silence for permission, I continued. My loyalty for invisibility. And my restraint for weakness. His eyes flickered. I was never weak, I said. I was patient. The words settled between us like a verdict. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Whatever argument he had rehearsed no longer fit the moment. I stood, slipped my coat on slowly. Alara, he said. Wait. I paused, hand on the back of the chair. This is the last time we speak outside of parenting logistics, I said. Do not contact me again. Do not look for closure where you forfeited trust. He nodded, defeated. I hope you're happy. I met his eyes one final time. I'm free, I said. Happiness follows. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, Calder Voss remained seated, a man finally forced to sit with the consequences of every choice he thought would never reach him. I stepped outside into the daylight, breathed in deeply, and didn't look back. There was nothing left behind me worth carrying forward. Only the future, unburdened, unnegotiated, and entirely my own. A year passed without announcement. No dramatic turning point. No moment where everything suddenly felt perfect. Just distance, steadily doing its work. The apartment I moved into after the house sold was smaller, quieter, and entirely mine. Light filled it differently. Nothing echoed. Nothing waited to be managed. My daughter Ansby settled in faster than I expected. Children adapt when stability is honest. She stopped asking when things would go back to normal. This was normal now. Mornings became mine again. Coffee without checking anyone else's schedule. Work chosen intentionally, not around someone else's ambition. I returned to consulting slowly, selectively, under my own name. No borrowed credibility, no background role. Clients came through referrals, then reputation. The work felt clean, focused. Mine. People stopped whispering. At first, my name carried context. That situation, that divorce, that gala. Over time, it didn't. That's how irrelevance works. It fades when you stop feeding it. Calder didn't vanish. He shrank. I heard about him the way you hear about someone you once knew well but no longer recognize. Through updates that sounded uncertain, short-term roles, a move that didn't stick, another one that didn't either. His name stopped opening doors. Then it stopped being mentioned at all. We spoke only when necessary. School logistics, calendar confirmations, neutral ground. He tried once to sound familiar. I didn't meet him there. I didn't hate him. That surprised me the most. Hate requires proximity, investment. I had neither. What I felt instead was clarity, the kind that settles in after you stop rewriting history to make someone else comfortable. One afternoon, my daughter asked me why I looked different now. How? I asked. Lighter, she said, shrugging, already half turned back to her drawing. I smiled. That night after she fell asleep, I stood at the window and watched the city glow quietly below. No performance, no audience, just motion continuing whether or not anyone curated it. I thought about the woman I had been, the one who made herself smaller to keep peace, who trusted silence would be interpreted as strength. I didn't judge her. She had done what she knew how to do at the time, but she wasn't who I was anymore. Betrayal teaches you something if you let it. Not about other people, about yourself. It shows you exactly where you abandoned your own boundaries. Exactly how long you stayed after knowing better. Exactly what happens when you mistake loyalty for invisibility. Freedom doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself with revenge or applause. It settles in when you stop explaining your worth to people who benefit from misunderstanding it. Calder once told me I wasn't necessary to his future. He was right, just not in the way he meant. I didn't need to win. I didn't need him to suffer more. I didn't need an apology that arrived too late to matter. I needed distance, structure, and the courage to choose myself without negotiation. Some endings don't come with closure, they come with release, and once you feel that, truly feel it, you don't look back. You keep going, unburdened, unedited, free. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated, if it stirred something you didn't have words for before, go ahead and hit the hype button and tap the like button. It truly helps this channel reach people who need it. I'd love to hear your thoughts or your own experience in the comments. You're not alone here. And if you want more stories like this, grounded, real, and unapologetically honest, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.